Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. It's been exactly 2 years since the release of the final report of the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and a year since a national action plan was promised. Today, the federal government and Indigenous organizations presented that plan. Jamie Pashigumskam brings us details and reaction.
The online release of the National MMIWG Action Plan was attended by presenters and Indigenous leaders, as well as federal representatives. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau kept on hand the sacred bundle offered to him 2 years ago at the inquiry's final report ceremony. He said the action plan is a step towards ending a national tragedy.
When the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls presented its final report, it called on us to work together to develop a national action plan to end systemic causes of violence. We accepted their findings, including that what happened amounts to genocide.
The first steps listed in the report are short-term priorities such as addressing the root causes of racism, including public education and awareness campaigns, and trauma-informed training for those who work with Indigenous people. Support for families and survivors, including community-led programs, and stable housing and shelters for Indigenous women and gender-diverse people. This is the first major step for Rebecca Kudlu, president of Paktutut Inuit Women of Canada.
Women who are in abusive situations really don't have anywhere to go. And I always bring the fact that if you're being abused and it's 40 below out there, where do you go? Even if you try to move to another house where your relatives are, they're overcrowding and there's food insecurity.
The action plan lists the next steps that must be worked on, including the development of an implementation plan, the creation of an oversight body to define governmental roles and track results, and ensure the continued input and insight of survivors and family members. Denise Pictou-Maloney is the co-chair of the National Family Survivors Circle, who were involved to include lived experiences.
I'm hopeful, and I have to be, because this is all we have. And having the opportunity to sit at the table and to talk about accountability and to make sure that investments are felt on the ground and that there's a mechanism that can make sure that, that the follow through is there. It is critical. Our women and girls are dying, so we need that.
Where the first step was to identify short-term priorities, the implementation plan will develop medium to long-term strategies. The next stage in the process is expected to be released this fall. Jamie Pashigumskam, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Jamie. Today's launch of the action plan to follow up on the MMIWG inquiry has many people looking to the past. Our Ken Driscoll brings you someone who knows the damage a death can do to a family all too well.
This is Levy Naglingnik. In 2002, her cousin Jennifer was brutally murdered, a crime that shocked the city of Iqaluit. Jennifer was only 13 when she was killed. Levy remembers her big cousin Jennifer.
I think about her all the time. She was so happy and so loving, and she was like, we were pretty close. Her and my aunt Kimyetta babysat me a lot, and I just remember thinking she was the cool older cousin, and she loved spending time with me and my family.
The pain for Levy's family didn't stop there. In 2008, Jennifer's mother, Levy's aunt, Nikutai, committed suicide.
It was like a ripple effect. So not only did we lose Jen, we lost Nikutai. It was it goes to show how one murder, it can affect so many people.
Levy followed along when the MMIWG inquiry visited Nunavut, in Iqaluit and Rankin Inlet. With the action plan based on that inquiry being released today, she hasn't read it all yet, but she is hopeful.
It's nice seeing that it's a lot of pages. It seems like it was done very extensively. I just really believe that this, as great as it is, and even though it took 2 years, we really need to see action to these words.
What action does she want to see? She wants anti-racism programming to give Inuit equal footing.
Cultural sensitivity understanding and recognizing what Inuit face on a daily basis and working to bridge the gap between, RCMP and Inuit or healthcare workers and Inuit.
And now Nunavut is facing the murder of another young woman. Actress Emerald McDonald died in Kugluktuk, Nunavut in early May. RCMP haven't laid charges but are investigating it as a homicide. Naglingnik knows how the McDonalds feel.
I can only hope that, they find the person who did that. And I understand how they feel. It's an awful feeling. It's just complete, you're just so drained, but so emotional at the same time, and you're just lost and trying to find answers.
Those answers are what the MMIWG inquiry was created to find. Their success or failure will be judged by people just like Levy. People who have lost so much and continue to look for those answers. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Now, the federal government's plan is being panned by some. National MMIWG advocates came together today to blast the federal action plan. Women from Indigenous organizations across Canada criticized the plan, saying it lacked the action needed to keep Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people safe. Advocates called it a fragmented plan, and several organizations allege they were not involved in the action plan process.
This aspires to be a national action plan, but if we were ready to roll up our sleeves, include those women's organizations that are doing the work at the grassroots level, have their voices, we can take this as a beginning start point and work with this, work at the community level, and actually start to make the changes that we need in terms of addressing child welfare concerns.
Programming note now, coming up tonight right after the APTN National News, be sure to catch the 90-minute documentary Every Child Matters from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. The documentary honors residential school survivors and their families through storytelling and performances. Youth, leaders, knowledge keepers, and elders from a diverse group of Indigenous nations, communities, and cultures are featured in the broadcast.
Desires for furs drove them deep into our territories. Millions died through diseases that came with them. They also brought their system of education. All the while our foods were disappearing and our lands stolen. We began to starve. Soon their network of residential schools stretched from coast to coast to coast. We were forced to attend. They finally closed these schools in the 1990s. By then, generations of us had attended.
We are sorry.
We are still here. These are our stories.
Just an incredibly powerful and well done documentary. Again, you can catch Every Child Matters tonight right after the APTN National News. We've got to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, a roundup of the candidates vying for national chief. Stay with us. Welcome back. The race to replace outgoing National Chief Perry Bellegarde is officially underway. The nomination process wrapped up on Wednesday. 7 candidates have put their names forward to lead the Assembly of First Nations. Bellegarde previously announced he would not be seeking a third 3-year term. 2 of the candidates, Roseanne Archibald and Kevin Hart, were most recently AFN regional chiefs. Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler is also running. Reginald Bellarose, who has been the chief of Muskowhegan First Nation for the past 17 years, is also on the ballot. Alberta's Jody Calahoo Stonehouse and Quebec's Kathy Martin round out the list of candidates. Chiefs will select a new national chief virtually on July 7th. Well, shockwaves are continuing around the world as the news of the mass grave with 215 children were found buried in Kamloops. Here's some of our continuing coverage from APTN's Tina House as the community grapples with the tragedy.
From the 1860s to the 1990s, the goal of Indian residential schools was to assimilate Indigenous people into non-Indigenous society and eliminate all aspects of Indigenous culture, language, and essentially to break their spirits. Across Canada, there are 139 residential schools. Over 150,000 Indigenous kids were ripped from their families and forced to attend. Many have lived with a lifetime of nightmares and horrific memories, and others never made it home. Inside Canada's largest residential school in Kamloops, BC, a healing ceremony was held.
We'll say a prayer, blessing the home, asking God to bless the children that were found, the ones that came here and never made it home. I say, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen.
And just outside the school, at the Growing Memorial, teddy bears and flowers are overflowing, along with hundreds of handwritten messages.
What is most important is to keep going and never yield to anyone who opposes you. All lives matters. My condolences.
Manny Jules is a former chief of the Kamloops Indian Band and one of the survivors who attended the Kamloops Indian Residential School as a day scholar.
A lot of those hurts and pains have to be put behind us. But at the same time, we can never forget them. It would have been thousands of children coming through here, generations of kids that went on to become great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. So it'd be easily in excess of 10,000. But that's one of the forensic work that we want to undertake, is how many attended school here, how many were impacted by it.
With much of the school records either destroyed or heavily redacted, we may never know the full scale of the impact of the Indian residential schools in Canada.
It takes time to forgive, and it takes time to heal from what's happening here.
For survivor Rose Miller, who was severely abused while attending here, she found a way to heal her trauma and later on in life help other kids. In 1972 until 1979, Rose Miller came back to the Kamloops Indian Residential School, but this time as a nurse.
And I got them all, the glasses that were up to date, and then I got a lot of them their dental work done and different surgeries. And we had RCMP days here where they'd get to know the RCMP. They used to have a pool here. Things started changing. I got their clothes where they didn't have to all wear the same kind of clothes, different kind of shoes, so many things. They were allowed into town once a week, and a lot of them played ball here, and we played ball with them. We did a lot of things, the child workers and I, to try and change the whole system. And
Tina House, APTN National News, to Kamloops.
Great work this week by Tina. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who may need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. A logging operation that is cutting old growth cedars on Vancouver Island has been causing a lot of controversy. There have been protests, injunctions, and arrests. But how did this logging operation begin and who's behind it? APTN's Lee Wilson provides us with some context.
Teal Cedar is a privately owned logging company based in Surrey, BC. They applied for and got an injunction order in an area southwest of Vancouver Island in an area known as Fairy Creek. Blockades to protect old growth trees have been set up since August 2020 by an environmental group known as the Rainforest Flying Squad. According to BC Supreme Court documents, Teal Cedar was granted the right to access Tree Farm License 46, which is about 60,000 hectares in size. Fairy Creek Watershed, an area that is the heart of the dispute, is 1,199 hectares, and 3/4 of that is off limits to logging. In court documents, Teal Jones pointed the approval of a Peshidat First Nation, who get a portion of the stumpage fees from the province. The document states, TFL 46 lies within the traditional territory of the PFN. The PFN has a population of 287. All of Teal's issued and proposed cutting permits have been approved by PFN, although with the reservations of certain PFN rights and claims. Teal Jones will make about $20 million cutting the trees. The judge's decision to grant the injunction vacating a road, and a claim from Peshidat elder William Jones, who is opposed to the logging, and who claimed the logging would interfere with the practice of his religion. The injunction states, Mr. Jones states that if Fairy Creek is cut, he will be unable to practice his religion. As noted previously, most of Fairy Creek watershed area is in fact protected from logging, so it is difficult to accept Mr. Jones's evidence as a point of face value. The Peshidat First Nation responded to APTN an email statement on the matter in their traditional territory. Our territory is currently being exploited as a backdrop for a provincial environmental campaign with insufficient regard to the proper Indigenous protocols or the sovereignty, rights, and wishes or needs of the Peshidat people. Last week, the BC Ministry of Forests responded with an email statement as well. We understand how old-growth forests are managed is an emotional, divisive, and complex issue. BC's beautiful ancient forests are a part of what makes the province great to live in, and we owe it to future generations to protect them. According to RCMP statement as of Monday, 142 people have been arrested, mostly for breaching the injunction and others for obstruction of justice. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Thanks, Lee, for some important background there. Time for another quick break here. When we return, we'll take a look at this week's episode of APTN Investigates. Stay with us. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Charla Lawyer Lawrence from Duncan's First Nation in Alberta sent us a snap of artwork she created to honor residential school survivors. And it's something we'd like to keep going. If you have a photo that honors those forced to attend residential school, you can email it to share@aptn.ca and we'll do our best to get them on the air. Let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 16 with showers for St. John's, rain and 22 in Halifax. -1 with snow for Inukjuak, 6 and cloudy for Kuujjuaq. 28 with showers for Montreal, 23 and rain in Chibougamau. 27 and partly cloudy for Sault Ste. Marie, 1 degree cooler in North Bay. 21 in Thunder Bay, 27 with showers for Sioux Lookout. 26 with rain for Norway House and the Paw. 36 with showers in Winnipeg and Gimli, 35 and rain in Brandon. 30 with showers for Saskatoon, 1 degree warmer and rain in Regina. 20 with rain for Uranium City, 29 in Meadow Lake. In northern Alberta, 28 in Fort McMurray, 23 for High Level. 24 with showers for Edmonton, 30 in Lethbridge. 18 and cloudy in Vancouver, 1 degree warmer for Victoria. 18 with showers for Prince George, 21 in Fort Nelson. 13 and rain in Old Crow, 15 with showers for Whitehorse. Rain and 18 for Yellowknife, 20 and sunny in Wrigley. +1 for Sax Harbor, +3 with a chance of snow in Paulatuck. 0 in Arviette, 2 in Whale Cove and Chesterfield. -3 in Resolute, 0 with a chance of snow in Arctic Bay. The Canada Council for the Arts announced 14 winners of the Governor's General Arts Awards this week, and it includes a first-time winner with her first ever book. Michelle Good is a former lawyer turned author. Good also works with numerous organizations advocating for Indigenous issues. Her first book, 5 Little Indians, has won the Governor General's Literary Award for fiction selected by her peers. The book is centered around the stories of 5 survivors of residential schools, and the characters coming to terms with their past while living in the present. Good, who is from Red Pheasant Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, but now living in Kamloops, BC, hopes the book motivates readers to learn more about residential schools.
That they will be inspired not only to understand more about the history of residential schools, but also to look inside themselves and to create a deeper, more compassionate understanding for why things are the way they are. As, after 150 years of our children being taken away, how can anybody expect that would just, resolve in the first or second generation after the schools closed? It can't.
And congrats to Michelle. The award also comes with a $25,000 prize for the author and $3,000 for the publisher to promote the books. In the 1960s, a small group of Dene from the Northwest Territories were forcibly removed from their traditional homeland by the federal government. Tomorrow night on APTN Investigates, video journalist Cullen Crozier looks into their decades-long fight for recognition. Here's a preview of Refugees in Our Land, Part 2.
Tzi Arthur Beck Sylvia, that this chat the Niyan, Jabolish shit on the slingly. Yeah, my name is Arthur Beck. I'm born in Yellowknife, raised on Tolson River, an old village called Russia River.
This is where Arthur Beck feels most at home, breaking trails on the land and tracing the footsteps of his ancestors. Beck volunteered to take APTN Investigates up to his family's cabin at Russia River, but weather made the trip impossible. We caught up with him here on the shores of Yellowknife Bay.
I am the true Yellowknife. My grandfather is Chief Snuff, 6 generations on my mother's side. He signed the treaty July 25th, 1900 in Fort Resolution for our people, the Yellowknives.
Beck's family never really left Rosher River. Both his parents were born along the Tulsin and continued to live there, even after the river was dammed and the people forced to leave.
You can catch the rest of Refugees in Our Land Part 2 tomorrow night following the APTN National News, and we'll have Cullen here tomorrow to talk about it as well. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and stay up to date by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us tonight. Have a great night.